Well, hello and welcome to the next in our series of Rockend Rockstars. And today we're talking to someone who's had a fairly good history with Rockend and certainly very, very skilled in the area of property management. Rosa Zoccali is the business owner at Harcourt's Vision in Melbourne's Keilor East, and she brings well over a decade of experience in property management and in business systems. Rosa, welcome to the show. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Just before we dig straight into the business too, there's a bit of history there, isn't there? I touched on that. You were previously with Rockend as well.
I was. So prior to me opening up this office, I was with Rockend for 10 years as a business development manager here in Victoria.
So as a BDM, you would have been front line with the operators, helping develop the platform?
So the great experience that gave me was the opportunity to see a myriad of different businesses, from startups right through to very, very large businesses, very good businesses, and maybe not so good. So it was a great experience. Yeah,
well, that would have been a bit like going to Property Management University, I guess, in a way, and bring all that information into what you do now.
Definitely, yeah.
Has that helped you bring that into your business? Has that helped you grow it?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So I opened this office now close to 5 years ago. So one of the big questions for me at the time was, and I know that there's a lot of clients out there that are confronted with this issue, is do I go REST, do I go Property Tree? So that was a big question for me at the time, as to what was going to be best for my business moving forward, and what were my needs at the time, but more importantly to put a foundation in place of what my business was going to look like in 5 years, 10 years time. So that was a big consideration as well.
Just help me there then, because a lot of people, you are right, will be asking that question. What were the things that you had to consider in making that decision?
I guess for me was, first of all, the long-term vision of what I had in my mind of what my business was going to look like. First and foremost was this, everyone talks about a paperless office, and a lot of detractors will say, that it's not something that's really achievable in property management. That was certainly something that I wanted. I wanted to not have a server. I wanted to have a cloud-based solution for all of my programs. So obviously when I was a BDM with Rockend, all I was really concerned about was the Rockend product. But as a business owner, I understand that there's a whole suite of products that I have to use. So what's the best platform? So without not having a server, being cloud-based, having mobility and flexibility was certainly a huge attraction for me. The other big deciding factor for me was also the fact that Property Tree was certainly the way of the future. So I had every confidence that the program was going to progress and grow and get better ahead of the growth of my business. So that was a big deciding factor as well.
Cutting back on paper, I mean, well, let me ask you this question this way. Have you achieved the paperless office, or are you on your way to it?
Not completely. I reckon we're probably about, I'd say we're about 80% there. So what's interesting is, and it's funny, I was just having this conversation with an auditor earlier today, the issue I think for most business owners is the conflict in opinions out there in the marketplace. So you'll have some auditors that will insist that you have a hard copy of ABC. And then other auditors will say, well, no, if you're producing your agreements digitally, you don't need to print it out. So that's challenging. But yeah, we basically have one manila folder with probably about 3 or 4 separate hard copy documents in that manila folder. And by the end of this year, that won't exist.
Have you found this paperless environment an advantage when you're communicating with your owners and with your tenants in terms of being able to give them the information a lot quicker and know that it's there?
Most certainly. So one of the things that I embraced pretty much straight away was we use a program called I Agree for electronic agreements. Yep. And I've had situations where I've sent the agreement out to the tenant at 9 o'clock at night, and within 15 minutes I've had the tenancy agreement signed and duly signed and sent back to me. So because we're looking to secure tenancies on behalf of our landlords as quickly as possible, to be able to have that kind of turnaround time is a game changer. I use that as a listing tool when I go out and see landlords that, we are doing all of that digitally. Once we've got a tenant confirmed, they get an email with a link to the Consumer Affairs Victoria booklet. We don't produce that manually anymore. We don't give them a hard copy of that anymore. And what we've worked out is that we don't have a tenant pack. Most offices will say, you've got to put the tenant pack together. We don't have one. We get the tenants in, have a cup of coffee and hand them the keys. Yeah. Everything else has already been supplied to them.
It's all digital. Communication, I know from reading a little bit about your history, is one of your passions, and that is, good communication opens up great lines of, ability to work comfortably with people. Communication in this environment, and that is, where you're digitally storing everything, has that made it easier for you in your conversations with owners as well? In other words, total transparency?
Exactly. Well, that was exactly what I was going to say. I think from what I've seen is owners do want... I've got an interesting mix of demographic in my area. So it is primarily quite an older demographic with regards to my investors. However, it is a really good mix with younger investors. And irrespective of their age group, they want information very quickly. I mean, that's just what everyone wants. So to be able to give them access to information either via the portal, although we don't have a lot of take up on the portal, I do offer it. I have some people that love it. But just for me to structure my office in such a way that I have an administrator who takes care of all of that. And there's we've spent a lot of time in Property Tree setting up templates. So we do have the automatic templates with regards to sending out routine reports within 48 hours, sending out confirmation of rent reviews and lease renewals. All of that is already set up, and it pretty is 3 clicks and it's done.
Can we just talk a little bit about your business then, the size of your business? You mentioned, I think you've been operating it for about 5 years. Tell me about the growth in your property management business. How have you achieved that, and where do you see it going?
The growth, that's just me with my salesperson brain, I guess, is not as high as I would have liked it to be at this point. I made a decision from day one that we weren't going to buy a rent roll. Again, going by my experience in seeing a lot of offices, I've seen how that can cause a lot of disruptions. That was just my personal opinion. I wanted to have total control over the integrity of my fees and my services. So I thought, okay, we'll just start from scratch. So when we opened the office, we had 0. At the moment, we're just shy of 170. So I think it was within the first year and a half that I got to about 80, close to 80, and that's when I employed a property manager. So up until that point, I was doing everything. So certainly grown it organically, and I am glad that I have. I've kept the integrity of the portfolio. I can be a little bit more, I suppose, picky with regards to my clients, and it's worked out well. It's worked out very well.
Yeah, you got to 80 and then you had to put on someone to help you. That's about right, 80 to 100. Yep. I would imagine now you're at, 160, 170. You're probably going to be stretching. You're probably bulging a little bit now too, are you?
We're looking, the plan is that by the end of the year I'll be at 200, and by that stage I'll have obviously a full-time property manager and perhaps a full-time junior property manager. Again, the way I'm trying to set up the business is that with all of my suite of products, that it enables the property managers to do things very quickly and easily. So there isn't a lot of paperwork, there isn't a lot of extra stuff that they need to do. So they can manage, 150 to 160 properties quite easily. And my aim is that all of that repetitive tasks are done very, very easily and quickly through the software. So they can just ring up the owner and have a chat, or ring up the tenant and have a chat, or, catch up for a coffee. That's one of the things I'm really encouraging my property managers to do, to create the relationship. Although communication and automated communication is fantastic, and there is certainly a place for it, what we need to be very careful of is we don't replace human communication with that. And that's one of the things that I sort of try and drum into my property manager. Don't always rely on SMSs and emails. Don't forget to pick up the phone, and don't forget to just say hi and catch up for a coffee.
Yeah, such an important point you make, Rosa, because I think with, our speed to try and get good communication, we look at technology as the answer to that, SMSing, emailing and so on, and we do lose that ability, that skill, I believe, to be able to talk like you and I are talking right now.
Yeah.
It probably takes as much time, but it actually is 10 times more effective.
Well, we had a situation earlier, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and there was a toing and froing, excuse me, of emails, and it was, they were just coming back and forth, and I tend to not be the most patient person in the world, and I thought, no, to hell with this, and just picked up the phone and spoke to the landlord over the phone and got the problem resolved within 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, is don't be afraid to pick up the phone. Excuse me, you can resolve that situation very quickly. And so I'm passionate about giving my staff the time and the freedom to do that. So I don't want them to be overworked. I don't want them to be going home stressed out. I want them to have that time to say, yeah, I'm just going to call that owner and just make sure that everything went well with that particular maintenance issue or something like that.
Well, 5 years down the track, your business is growing quite nicely. I can tell from our conversation that you're quite comfortable with that, and that's fantastic. You're looking at growth between now and the end of the year. Mm-hmm. What are you implementing into your business to give you that growth? What are the key things you're doing?
I guess my role is, apart from business owner, is also the business development manager. So my key element for the next 3 months is basically to remove myself as much as possible from getting bogged down into the day-to-day running of the property management. So all I can work on is business growth. I suppose from key elements is we are leveraging quite heavily, I guess, with Rate My Agent, and we're getting a lot of reviews. So at the moment, with the Rate My Agent results for Keilor East is quite high. So we're ranking number 1 in Rate My Agent, and that's very good. We are one office. We're not a rental department and a sales department. So there are some key strategies in place for the salespeople to refer business to the rental department, and that is working exceptionally well. And so we do work very, there's a great synergy between those two areas. And because my brother looks after the sales area and I look after property management, the two areas are definitely one, and we work quite well together.
Yeah. Looking at the industry for a moment, pulling yourself out of your business, and no doubt you've had to ask yourself these questions too. What do you think are going to be the biggest challenges for property management businesses over the next 12 to 18 months?
I think with there's two things. First of all, that the residential market has dipped a bit, and certainly one of the biggest challenges for us in Victoria is the rewrite of the Residential Tenancies Act. There's a lot of fear-mongering in the market at the moment, but certainly what I think is going to happen, and I'm already seeing that as a point of difference when I'm going out to get new business, in that I'm explaining to my soon-to-be clients that with the rewrite of the Act, you need to make sure that you've got a property manager that is well versed in the Act, that understands all of the complexities, understands how it applies to their property, and what are some of the downsides or upsides to their property. So I think being much more educated and much more, as a trusted advisor, that's always been my catch cry as to what I want to be for my clients, but more from a consultation point of view. So I'd love to get rid of the term property management, because we don't just manage the properties. It really is giving sound advice to our clients on what's the best way for them to move forward with their investment property. So in my discussions with potential clients, I mean, I spend a lot of time talking about things like landlord insurance and tax depreciation schedules, and what's their plan on renovations for the next 1 to 5 years. And I think that's a conversation that many property managers don't enter into. And again, it's only through lack of education.
Yeah, you're very right. I mean, investors don't just call them properties. They have a portfolio. And I sometimes think that the property manager, and I'll use that term, and I know you don't like it, but I'll use it, the property manager is pretty instrumental in making sure that portfolio is well managed, is structured, is reviewed, and is really earning it to its highest potential, Rosa.
And I think that the way that you can do that comes back to the property managers themselves, and the responsibility lies with the business owners, and that is to empower their staff and make sure that they are educated and make sure that they do have confidence and they have all of the knowledge at their disposal to have those kind of conversations with a client, be it a tenant or a landlord, that you are armed with all of that information, and even if you don't know the answers, to say, hey, look, let me just speak to someone and I'll get back to you. But and the onus goes back on the business owner for having to invest in their staff, making sure that they've got the self-confidence to have those conversations.
Last question for you, Rosa, and that is, turn the clock back now 5 years, and you've just opened your business. Knowing what you know now, is there anything you would have done differently?
Yes, a great deal. I think that what I would love to have done differently is been a lot more educated in business finance, like budgeting and financials and that side of it. That has been a huge challenge and a huge, well, I suppose in a way you could say, call it a stumbling block, but that's been a huge learning curve for me. To be able to really know about, profit and loss and profit per property and how much money we need at base level. And that's not the sort of stuff that they teach you before you get your license. You basically get your license and they say, off you go and open up an office. Having said that though, with the Harcourts Group and certainly I can only speak about Harcourts Victoria, we've had enormous support. Particularly Emma Gordon from Harcourts Victoria, a property management executive, she's been absolutely sensational in the advice and the years of experience bringing that into my business. But yeah, certainly do a bit of a finance course.
Very good advice, Rosa. It's been great talking to you. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to share your wisdom with us. It's been great talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Bye.